The following is a conversation with Donald Trump on this, the Lex Fridman podcast. One of the great things about people from the business world is they're often great deal makers. And you're a great deal maker. And you've talked about the war in Ukraine and that you would be able to find a deal that both Putin and Zelensky would accept. What do you think that deal looks like?
I think the deal, and I wouldn't talk about it too much because I think I can make a deal. If I win as president-elect, I'll have a deal made, guaranteed. That's a war that shouldn't have happened. It's terrible. Look, Biden is the worst president in the history of our country, and she's probably worse than him. That's something that should have never happened, but it did happen. And now it's a much tougher deal to make than it would have been before it started. Millions of people. I think the number is going to be a lot higher when you see this all at some point iron out. I think the death numbers are going to be a lot higher than people think. When you take a look at the destruction and the buildings coming down all over the place in Ukraine, I think those numbers are going to be a lot higher. They lie about the numbers. They try and keep them low. They knocked down a building that's 2 blocks long. These are big buildings. And they say one person was mildly injured. No. A lot of people were killed. And there are people in those buildings, and they have no chance. Once they start coming down, there's no chance. So that's a war that absolutely has to get done. And then you have Israel, and then you have a lot of other places that are talking war. The world is a rough place right now. And a lot of it's because of the fact that America has no leadership. And I believe that she'll be probably worse than Biden. I watched the interview the other night. I mean, it was just a softball interview.
So you would like to see her do more interviews, challenged more?
I don't know. I can't believe the whole thing is happening. We had a man in there that should have never been in there. They kept him in a basement. They used COVID. They cheated, but they used COVID to cheat. And they cheated without COVID too. But you had somebody in there, and now we have a woman that is not, she couldn't do an interview. This was a really soft interview. This is an interview where they're given a multiple choice questions, multiple guess. I call it multiple guess. And I don't think she did well. I think she did very poorly.
Tough topic, but important. You said lost by a whisker. I'm an independent. I have a lot of friends who are independent, many of whom like your policies, like the fact that you're a deal maker, like the fact that you can end wars, but they are troubled by what happened in the 2020 election and statements about widespread fraud and this kind of stuff, fake electoral scheme. What can you say to those independent voters to help them decide who to vote for?
Right. I think the fraud was on the other side. I think the election was a fraud. And many people felt it was that, and they wanted answers. And when you can't challenge an election, you have to be able to challenge it. Otherwise, it's going to get worse, not better. And there are lots of ways to solve this problem. Go to paper ballots, do it the easy way. The paper ballots, and you have voter ID, and you have same-day voting, and you have proof of citizenship, which is very important because we have people voting that are not citizens. They just came in, and they're loading up the payrolls. They're loading up everything. They're putting students in schools. They don't speak a word of English, and they're taking the seats of people that are citizens of our country. So, look, we have the worst border in the history of the world. We have coming into our country right now millions and millions of people at levels that nobody's ever seen. I don't believe any country's ever seen it. And they would use sticks and stones not to make it happen, not to let it happen. We don't do anything. And we have a person who was the border czar, who now said she wasn't really the border czar, but she was. She was the border czar, but she was in charge of the border. And we have her, and she's saying very strongly, oh, I did such a good job. She was horrible. The harm she's done. But we have people coming in from other countries all over the world, not just South America, And they're coming in from prisons and jails. They're coming in from mental institutions and insane asylums. And they're street criminals. Right off the street, they take them. And they're being given to our country. Drug dealers, human traffickers. We're destroying our country. This is a sin, what's been allowed to take place over the last 4 years. We're destroying our country. And we'll see how that all works out. But it's not even believable. And now you saw in Aurora, Colorado, a group of very tough young thugs from Venezuela taking over big areas, including buildings. They're taking over buildings. They have their big rifles, but they're taking over buildings. We're not going to let this happen. We're not going to let them destroy our country. And in those countries, crime is way down. They're taking them out of their prisons, which is good because good for them. I do the same thing. By the way, if I ran one of those countries, any country in the world, I would make sure that America has every one of our prisoners. Every one of our criminals would be here. I can't believe they're going so slowly, but some aren't. But they all are doing it. And we can't let that happen. They're emptying out their prisons and their mental institutions into the United States of America. We can't let that happen.
What do you think is the right way to solve the immigration crisis? Is mass deportation one of the solutions you would think about?
Well, you've got to get the criminals out of here fast, right? The people from mental institutions, you got to get them back into their mental institution. No country can afford this. It's just too much money. You look at what's happening in New York and Chicago and LA and lots of places, and you take a look at what's happening. There's no country can afford this. We can't afford it. And we've got to get the bad ones out immediately, and the rest have to be worked on. It's happened before. Dwight Eisenhower was sort of a moderate president, moderate type person, but he hated when he saw people pouring into the country, and they were. Nothing like now. I probably got elected in 2016 because of the border. And I told people what was happening, and they understood it. And I won the election, I think, because of the border. Our border is 25 times worse right now than it was in 2016. I had it fixed too. I had it the last week of the famous chart that I put up was exactly that. The chart. When I looked to the right, I said, there's the chart. That was not a pleasant experience. But the chart that I put up said, and that was done by Border Patrol, that was the lowest number that we've ever had come into our country in recorded history. And we have to get it back to that again. We will.
A lot of people listening to this, myself included, that doesn't think that Kamala is a communist.
Well, she's a Marxist.
Her father's a Marxist.
That's right.
And she's advocating.
It's a little unusual.
She's advocating for some policies that are towards the direction of democratic socialism, let's say. But there's a lot of people that kind of know the way government works, and they say, well, none of those policies are going to actually come to reality. It's just being used during the campaign to, groceries are too expensive. We need them cheaper. So let's talk about price controls. And that's never going to come to reality.
It could come to reality. Look, she came out with price control. It's been tried like 121 different times at different places over the years, and it's never worked once. It leads to communism. It leads to socialism. It leads to having no food on the shelves. And it leads to tremendous inflation.
It's a
bad idea.
Whenever we use terms like communism for her, and I don't know if you know this, but some people call you a fascist.
Yeah, they do. So I figure it's all right to call them a communist. Yeah, they call me a lot worse than I call them.
They do indeed. It's just sometimes...
It's interesting, though. They'll call me something that's terrible, and then I'll hit them back. And they'll say, isn't it terrible what Trump said? I said, well, wait a minute. They just called me. So I believe you have to fight fire with fire. I believe they're very evil people. These are evil people. We have an enemy from the outside, and we have an enemy from within. And in my opinion, the enemy from within are radical left lunatics. And I think you have to fight back.
Whenever there's a lot of fighting fire with fire, it's too easy to forget that there's a middle of America that is that's moderate and kind of sees the good in both sides and just likes one side more than the other in terms of policies. Like I said, there's a lot of people that like your policies, that like your skill in being able to negotiate and end wars, and they don't see the impending destruction of America.
You know, we had no wars when I was president. That's a big thing. Not since 78 years has that happened. But we had no wars when I was president. We defeated ISIS, but that was a war that was started that we weren't anywhere near defeating. But think of it, I had no wars. And Viktor Orban, the prime minister of Hungary, said the world has to have Trump back because everybody was afraid of Trump. Now, that's what he said. So I'm not using that term, but I think they respected me. But he said China was afraid, Russia was afraid, everybody was afraid. And I don't care what word they use. That's even a better word if you want to know the truth. But let's use the word respect. They had respect for me. They had respect for the country. I mean, I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, the Russian pipeline. Nobody else could have done that. I ended it. It was done. Then Biden comes in and he approved it. So we're defending Germany and these other countries for peanuts compared to what it's worth. And they're paying the person we're defending them against billions and billions of dollars for energy. I said, how does that work? And we had it out with them, and it worked out good. And they paid hundreds of billions of dollars. Or you wouldn't even have a NATO right now. You wouldn't have NATO if it wasn't for me.
As the leader of the United States, you were the most powerful man in the world. As you mentioned, not only the most famous, but the most powerful. And if you become leader again, you will have unprecedented power. Just on your own personal psychology, what does that power do to you? Is there any threat of it corrupting how you see the world?
No, I don't think so. Look, I've been there for 4 years. I could have done a big number on Hillary Clinton. I thought it looked terrible to take the president's wife and put her in prison. She's so lucky. I didn't do anything. She's so lucky. Hillary is a lucky woman because I had a lot of people pushing me too. They wanted to see something, but I could have done something very bad. I thought it looked so bad. Think of it. You have the president of the United States, and you also had Secretary of State, right? She was. But you're going to put the president's wife in prison? And yet when I got out there, they have all these hoaxes. They're all hoaxes. But they have all these dishonest hoaxes, just like they did in the past with Russia. That was a hoax. The 51 different, agencies or agents, that was a hoax. The whole thing was a hoax. There was so many hoaxes and scams. But I didn't want to put her in jail. And I didn't. And I explained it to people. They say, lock her up. It doesn't. We won. I said, we don't want to put her in jail. We want to bring the country together. I want to bring the country together. You don't bring the country together by putting her in jail. But then when I got out, they went to work on me. It's amazing. And they suffer from massive Trump derangement syndrome, TDS. And I don't know if it's curable from their standpoint.
A lot of people are very interested in footage of UFOs. The Pentagon has released a few videos, and there's been anecdotal reports from fighter pilots. So a lot of people want to know, will you help push the Pentagon to release more footage, which a lot of people claim is available?
Oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I would do that. I'd love to do that. I have to do that. But they also are pushing me on Kennedy. Mm-hmm. And I did release a lot, but I had people come to me and beg me not to do it. But I'll be doing that very early on. But I would do that.
There's a moment where you had some hesitation about Epstein, releasing some of the documents on Epstein. Why the hesitation?
I don't think I'm not involved. I never went to his island, fortunately. But a lot of people did.
Why do you think so many smart, powerful people allowed him to get so close?
He was a good salesman. He was, was a hale and hearty type of guy. He had some nice assets that he'd throw around, like islands. But a lot of big people went to that island. But fortunately, I was not one of them.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way. Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be...
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it. Now, Kennedy's interesting because it's so many years ago. You know, they do that for danger, too, because, you know, it endangers certain people, et cetera, et cetera. So Kennedy is very different from the Epstein thing. But yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
That's great to hear. What gives you strength when you're getting attacked? You're one of the most attacked people in the world.
I think you can't care that much. I know people that care so much about everything, like what people are saying. You can't care too much because you end up choking.
One of the tragic things about life is that it ends. How often do you think about your death? Are you afraid of it?
I have a friend who's very, very successful, and he's in his 80s, mid-80s, and he asked me that exact same question. I turned it around. I said, well, what about you? He said, I think about it every minute of every day. And then a week later, he called me to tell me something, and he starts off the conversation by going, tick, tock, tick, tock.
Yeah.
Now, this is a dark person, you know, in a sense, but it is what it is. I mean, you know, if you're religious, you have, I think, a better feeling toward it. You know, you're supposed to go to heaven, ideally not hell, but you're supposed to go to heaven if you're good. I think our country's missing a lot of religion. I think it really was a much better place with religion. It was almost a guide, you know, to a certain extent it was a guide. You want to be good to people. Without religion, there are no guardrails. I'd love to see us get back to religion, more religion in this country.
Well, Mr. President, thank you for putting yourself out there, and thank you for talking today.
Look, I love the country. I want to see the country be great, and we have a real chance of doing it, but it's our last chance, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.